In a quiet little town surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at its own relaxed pace. The people here were simple, and everyone seemed to know each other's business. Among the most prominent groups in the town was the biker gang, a rough-and-tumble bunch known for their loud motorcycles, leather jackets, and an attitude that screamed confidence. They weren't exactly troublemakers, but they certainly liked to make their presence felt wherever they went. One day, something unusual happened in this otherwise predictable town. A woman named Sarah Jennings returned after years of being away. She wasn't just any ordinary person. She was a decorated military canine handler who had spent years overseas working alongside some of the finest trained dogs in the world. Her job involved training and handling military canines, dogs capable of performing incredible feats like detecting explosives, tracking suspects, and even protecting soldiers in dangerous situations. These weren't your average family pets. These were highly skilled professionals with razor-sharp instincts and unmatched loyalty. Sarah came back to her hometown because she'd been asked to train the local police department on how to work effectively with police dogs. It was supposed to be a temporary assignment, but it quickly became clear that this wouldn't be as straightforward as she thought. While Sarah was used to commanding respect in the military, things were different here. In this small town, old-fashioned ideas still held sway, and many folks didn't take kindly to seeing a woman in charge, especially one whose expertise revolved around animals. Some whispered behind her back, questioning whether her methods would really work or if she was all talk. Others flat out dismissed her, assuming that a woman couldn't possibly handle such demanding tasks. Despite the whispers and sideways glances, Sarah remained focused. She knew what she was doing, and more importantly, she trusted her dogs completely. Titan and Luna, her two Belgian Malinois, were not only her partners but also her closest companions. They had been through thick and thin together, from scorching deserts to freezing mountain passes. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through countless hours of training and shared experiences. To Sarah, they weren't just tools for the job, they were family. On a crisp afternoon, Sarah decided to take Titan and Luna for a walk along the edge of town. It was a peaceful route, lined with tall trees and wildflowers, perfect for giving her dogs a chance to stretch their legs after a long day of training exercises. As she strolled along the path, enjoying the fresh air, she heard the unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines in the distance. At first it was faint, but soon, the sound grew louder and louder until it filled the entire area. Turning a corner, Sarah found herself face to face with a group of bikers parked outside a roadside diner. The scene was chaotic. There were about 10 of them, all dressed in black leather, with bandanas tied around their heads. Their bikes gleamed under the sunlight and the smell of gasoline lingered in the air. The bikers were laughing and joking loudly, clearly having a good time. When they noticed Sarah walking by with her dogs, however, their tone changed. One of them pointed at her and shouted something that made the rest burst into laughter. Another whistled mockingly while yet another called out, "Hey, princess, what have you got there? Puppy playtime?" Sarah tried to ignore them, keeping her eyes forward and focusing on her dogs. But the comments kept coming. "Look at those little ankle biters," one of the bikers sneered. "Think they can handle anything tougher than a chew toy?" Another chimed in, "Yeah, maybe she should stick to petting zoos instead of trying to act all tough." The laughter echoed around her, making her cheeks burn with frustration. As much as Sarah wanted to keep walking, she couldn't help but feel a pang of anger rising inside her. These men didn't know anything about her or her dogs. They hadn't seen Titan leap over walls or Luna sniff out hidden contraband buried deep underground. All they saw was a woman with 2 dogs, and that was enough for them to dismiss her entirely. Still, she reminded herself why she was here: to teach, to share her knowledge, and to make a difference. Arguing with a bunch of rowdy bikers wasn't going to accomplish anything. But then one of the bikers stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a scruffy beard and a tattooed arm resting casually on his bike. This was Jake, the unofficial leader of the group. His voice carried authority when he spoke. "You think those mutts are so special?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Prove it. Show us what they can do." For a moment, Sarah hesitated. She didn't owe these men anything, and engaging with them felt like stooping to their level. But deep down, she also knew that moments like this mattered. If she walked away now, they'd never see her or her dogs for what they truly were. And so, with a deep breath, she turned to face Jake. "Fine," she said firmly, "but don't say I didn't warn you." The bikers exchanged amused glances, clearly expecting nothing more than a laughable performance. Little did they know, Sarah and her dogs were about to show them something unforgettable. Unbeknownst to the bikers, this encounter would change their perspective and perhaps even their lives forever. The bikers' laughter followed Sarah as she stood her ground, her posture unwavering despite the taunts. She glanced down at Titan and Luna, who were already alert, their ears perked and bodies tense, ready to respond to her every command. To them, this wasn't a game or a spectacle, it was work, and they took it seriously. Sarah's calm demeanor masked the storm brewing inside her. She knew what her dogs were capable of, but she also understood that proving it to these skeptical bikers wouldn't be easy. They weren't just testing her. They were testing the limits of trust between human and animal. Jake leaned against his motorcycle, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered across his face. "All right, princess," he said, his tone mocking. "Let's see what your little show ponies can do. You've got our attention, now don't disappoint." The rest of the bikers chuckled, clearly enjoying themselves. One of them even pulled out a phone, pretending to record the scene, though it was obvious they expected nothing more than a few minutes of entertainment before moving on. Sarah ignored the cameras and the jeers. Instead, she focused on setting up a challenge that would highlight her dog's skills without putting anyone in harm's way. She scanned the area quickly and spotted a patch of tall grass nearby. Turning to one of the bikers, a wiry man with a scruffy beard, she asked, "Do you have anything small on you? A keychain, maybe?" He hesitated for a moment, then fished out a metallic keychain shaped like a skull and handed it to her. Without saying a word, Sarah walked over to the grassy field and crouched down, hiding the object deep within the thick blades. When she returned, she addressed the group. "This is a basic tracking exercise," she explained, her voice steady and professional. "My dog Titan will use his sense of smell to locate the hidden item. It's something we train for regularly in military operations." Some of the bikers exchanged skeptical glances, while others rolled their eyes. Jake snorted loudly. "Yeah, okay. Let's see if your mutt can sniff out a piece of junk." Sarah knelt beside Titan, placing a hand gently on his head. Her touch conveyed confidence and reassurance, something the dog responded to instantly. She gave him a brief command in a low, firm tone, pointing toward the field where the keychain lay hidden. Titan's nose twitched as he caught the faintest whiff of the scent. With a burst of energy, he bounded into the grass, zigzagging methodically. As he searched for the target, the bikers watched silently, their initial amusement fading into curiosity. Within seconds, Titan stopped near a clump of grass. His tail wagged once, signaling success, and he began digging carefully until the metallic keychain emerged. Picking, head up delicately in his mouth, he trotted back to Sarah and dropped it at her feet. The entire process had taken less than 30 seconds. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then one of the bikers muttered, "Huh, that was kinda impressive." Jake, however, wasn't convinced. "Beginner's luck," he scoffed. "Any dog could find a shiny piece of metal. What else? You got?" Sarah didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she gestured toward a pile of discarded barrels and wooden planks lying near the edge of the field. "Luna specializes in agility," she said, motioning for the dog to join her. "She's trained to navigate complex environments quickly and efficiently. I'll set up a simple course here, and you'll see what she's capable of." With practiced efficiency, Sarah arranged the barrels and planks into a makeshift obstacle course. There were jumps, tunnels created by stacking barrels, and narrow planks balanced precariously on rocks. When she finished, she stepped back and signaled for Luna to begin. The sleek Malinois wasted no time. She sprinted forward, leaping effortlessly over the first barrel, weaving through the second and scaling the plank with grace and precision. Each movement was calculated, each step deliberate. By the time Luna completed the course, panting lightly but otherwise unfazed, even Jake couldn't hide his surprise. Not bad, he admitted grudgingly, but his pride wouldn't let him concede fully. Still doesn't mean much. Any well-trained circus dog could pull off tricks like that. Sarah clenched her jaw slightly but kept her composure. She knew Jake was trying to provoke her, but she refused to let him get under her skin. Instead, she decided to raise the stakes. "You want to see real teamwork?" she asked, her voice sharp yet controlled. "How about a scenario where my dogs have to protect me in a chaotic environment? If you're brave enough, one of you can play the role of an aggressor, and you'll see how Titan and Luna respond." The bikers exchanged uneasy glances. This was getting serious now, and some of them looked hesitant, but Jake, ever eager to prove a point, grinned widely. "All right, fine, Rico," he called out, pointing to the largest man in the group. Rico was built like a tank with bulging muscles and a shaved head. He cracked his knuckles and stepped forward, clearly relishing the opportunity to intimidate. "Let's see if your dogs are as tough as you claim," Jake added, folding his arms again. Sarah nodded calmly, though her heart was racing. This part of the demonstration carried inherent risks, but she trusted her dogs implicitly. She gave Titan and Luna a series of subtle hand signals, instructifying them to stay vigilant. As Rico approached, shouting insults and waving his arms menacingly, both dogs shifted into protective mode. Titan positioned himself squarely between Sarah and Rico, his body rigid and his teeth bared in a warning growl. Luna circled around, cutting off any potential escape routes and ensuring Rico couldn't flank them. Rico hesitated for a split second, clearly unprepared for the intensity of the dog's reaction. But when he lunged forward, mimicking an attack, Luna sprang into action. In a blur of motion, she darted around him, forcing him to stumble backward. Titan remained rooted in place, his piercing gaze locked onto Rico, daring him to make another move. The combination of speed, strategy, and sheer presence left the bikers speechless. Even Rico, who prided himself on his toughness, looked genuinely rattled. Jake tried to laugh it off, but the tension in the air was palpable. Okay, he said, holding up his hands. "Maybe your dogs aren't total pushovers after all, but let's be real. They haven't faced anything truly challenging yet. Here's the deal. If you really want to impress us, we'll set up one final test, something that proves they can handle real-world pressure." Sarah studied him carefully, weighing the implications of his words. She knew the bikers weren't going to let this go easily, and backing down now would only reinforce their doubts. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Fine," she said. "But remember, you asked for it." The bikers erupted into cheers, excited by the prospect of seeing what Sarah and her dogs could really do. Little did they know the next challenge would push everyone, including themselves, to their limits. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as Jake stepped forward, his earlier smugness replaced by a serious expression. He wasn't just teasing anymore. He was determined to create a challenge that would truly test Sarah and her dogs. The bikers gathered around him, their excitement palpable as he began outlining the final scenario. "All right," Jake announced, his voice carrying authority. "We're going to make this real. We'll scatter ourselves across the field, shouting, whistling, throwing stuff, whatever it takes to distract your dogs. Then we'll hide someone in the bushes over there." He pointed toward a dense cluster of trees and shrubs at the far end of the field. "If your dogs can track down the guy while ignoring all the noise and chaos, then maybe, just maybe, we'll admit they're as good as you say." Sarah listened carefully, her mind racing through the logistics of the challenge. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Military dogs were trained for high-pressure situations, but even the best could struggle when faced with overwhelming distractions. Still, she trusted Titan and Luna completely. They had been through worse during their deployments, and she believed in their ability to rise to the occasion. With a firm nod, she agreed to the terms. "Fine," she said evenly. "But remember, my dogs aren't toys or tools, they're partners, and I won't put them in unnecessary danger." Jake shrugged nonchalantly, clearly unconcerned about her warning. "Don't worry, Princess, we're not looking to hurt anyone. Just see what these mutts are made of." His words carried a hint of mockery, but there was also a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Deep down, he wanted to know if Sarah's claims held any truth. With the rules set, the bikers sprang into action. They spread out across the open field, creating a chaotic scene designed to confuse and overwhelm. Some of them shouted random insults, while others blew whistles or clanged metal objects together. A few even threw sticks and rocks towards Sarah and her dogs, though none came close enough to cause harm. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of sounds meant to break focus and disrupt concentration. It was exactly the kind of environment where most animals would freeze or flee, but not Titan and Luna. Sarah knelt beside her dogs, speaking to them in a calm yet authoritative tone. "You've got this," she reassured them, her hands moving in practiced gestures that conveyed specific commands. Titan's muscles tensed as he prepared to spring into action, while Luna's sharp eyes darted back and forth, already scanning the area for potential threats. When Sarah gave the signal, both dogs sprang forward, their movements fluid and purposeful. Titan took the lead, his powerful body cutting through the chaos like a knife. Despite the constant distractions, the shouting, the whistling, the flying debris, he remained laser-focused on the task at hand. His nose twitched as he picked up faint traces of scent left behind by the hidden biker. Meanwhile, Luna patrolled the perimeter, ensuring no one interfered with Titan's progress. Her agility allowed her to dodge obstacles effortlessly, and her sharp bark served as both a warning and a distraction for anyone who dared get too close. As Titan closed in on the hiding spot, the tension among the bikers grew palpable. Even Jake, who had initially dismissed Sarah's dogs as nothing more than glorified pets, found himself leaning forward, watching intently. The biker hiding in the bushes, chosen specifically because of his size and imposing demeanor, tried to stay as still and quiet as possible, hoping to evade detection, but Titan's senses were unparalleled. Within moments, he zeroed in on the exact location, his growl low and menacing as he approached. The hidden biker froze as Titan emerged from the brush, pinning him to the ground with surprising speed and precision. Though the dog's teeth never touched him, the sheer force of Titan's presence left no room for doubt. Escape was impossible. Luna arrived seconds later, circling the pair to ensure everything remained under control. Together, the two dogs formed an impenetrable barrier, their teamwork flawless and intimidating. When Sarah finally caught up, she placed a calming hand on Titan's back, signaling him to stand down. The biker slowly raised his hands in surrender, his face flushed with embarrassment. Okay, he muttered, clearly shaken. "I'm done. Your dogs are insane." The rest of the bikers stared in stunned silence, their earlier bravado replaced by awe. Jake, who had been so confident in his skepticism, now looked genuinely unsettled. He walked over to Sarah, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "All right," he admitted grudgingly. "I didn't think they'd actually pull it off, those dogs. There's something else." Sarah crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "This isn't about showing off," she said firmly. "It's about trust, training, and understanding. My dogs aren't weapons, they're partners. Everything they do is based on years of practice and mutual respect. You can't just throw aggression at them and expect them to react blindly. They're smarter than that." Her words hung in the air, forcing the bikers to reconsider their initial assumptions. For so long, they had judged Sarah and her dogs based on appearances alone, dismissing them as weak or ineffective. But now, standing before them, were two animals whose intelligence, discipline, and loyalty surpassed anything they had ever witnessed. It wasn't just brute strength. It was precision, strategy, and an unbreakable bond between handler and canine. One of the younger bikers, a lanky man with a mop of unruly hair, spoke up hesitantly. "So, what happens if someone tries to mess with you for real? Like outside of this little demonstration?" His question was genuine, tinged with both curiosity and concern. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Then my dogs will do what they're trained to do, protect me without hesitation. But let me make one thing clear. Violence isn't the goal. The point of having a trained canine team is to de-escalate situations, not escalate them. These dogs, are here to keep people safe, not to start fights. Her explanation seemed to resonate with the group. Slowly, the hostility that had defined their earlier interactions began to dissolve, replaced by a newfound respect. Jake extended his hand toward Sarah, his usual arrogance softened by humility. "Look, I'm sorry for giving you such a hard time," he said sincerely. "You and your dogs proved us wrong today. That takes guts and skill." Sarah accepted his handshake, though her grip was firm and deliberate. "Apology accepted," she replied. "But don't forget what you learned here. Respect isn't given, it's earned, and it works both ways." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, the bikers dispersed, their laughter replaced by thoughtful murmurs. What had started as a confrontation fueled by prejudice and arrogance had transformed into a lesson none of them would soon forget. For Sarah, it was another chapter in her journey, a reminder that patience, perseverance, and belief in oneself could overcome even the toughest obstacles. And for Titan and Luna, it was proof once again that their bond with their handler was unshakable, a partnership built on trust and shared purpose. The next morning, the town buzzed with whispers about what had happened the day before. Word of Sarah and her dog's incredible performance had spread like wildfire, reaching places Sarah hadn't even imagined. At first, she thought it would just be idle gossip, people talking for a day or two before moving on to something else. But as she walked through the streets, she noticed something different in the way people looked at her. There was no more skepticism, no more sideways glances, or muttered comments under their breath. Instead, there was respect, an acknowledgement that she wasn't someone to be underestimated. Even more surprising was the change in the bikers. Jake and his crew, who had once mocked her so openly, were now treating her with a level of deference that bordered on reverence. When she passed them later that afternoon outside the diner where everything had started, they tipped their heads in greeting. One of them even called out, "Morning, ma'am," his tone polite and respectful. It was a far cry from the jeering laughter she'd endured just hours earlier. Jake himself approached her later that evening, pulling his motorcycle to a stop as she was heading home after another long day of training with the local police department. He removed his helmet, revealing a sheepish smile. "Hey, we've been thinking," he began, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "You know, about yesterday. We didn't just want to leave things hanging like that." Sarah raised, an eyebrow intrigued but cautious. "Go on," she said, folding her arms across her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she could tell Jake was trying hard to sound sincere. "Well," he continued, "we figure you've earned our respect, fair and square, and honestly, we kinda owe you one. So, we were wondering if maybe you'd teach us a thing or two about handling dogs properly. Not all of us are experts, obviously, but some of the guys have pets at home, and after seeing what Titan and Luna can do..." He trailed off, clearly embarrassed by how much he was admitting. Sarah blinked, taken aback by the request. Teaching bikers, men who had mocked her just days ago, how to handle animals responsibly. It seemed almost surreal, but then again, wasn't this exactly why she had agreed to stay in this town? To share her knowledge and make a difference. Slowly, a small smile spread across her face. "All right," she said finally, "but only if you promise to take it seriously. Training dogs isn't a game. It's about building trust and understanding, not dominance." Jake nodded eagerly. "Absolutely, you won't regret it." Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself spending more time than she'd expected with the bikers. They weren't the easiest students. Some of them struggled to follow instructions while others got frustrated when things didn't go perfectly, but they were eager to learn. Under her guidance, they practiced basic obedience commands with their own dogs, learning how to communicate effectively without resorting to force. To Sarah's surprise, they soaked up every lesson, asking questions and showing genuine interest in improving their relationships with their pets. One particularly memorable session involved teaching the bikers how to read their dog's body language. Sarah brought Titan and Luna along to demonstrate subtle cues that indicated stress, excitement, or discomfort. The bikers watched intently as Sarah explained how a tucked tail, flattened ears, or wide eyes could signal that a dog was feeling uneasy. Dogs talk to us all the time, she told them. It's up to us to listen. By the end of the session, even Rico, the burly biker who had played the role of the aggressor during the challenge, was crouching down beside his scruffy mutt, gently stroking its head and murmuring reassurances. Watching him interact with his dog, Sarah felt a swell of pride. These men who had once dismissed her as weak were now learning to see the world through her eyes, and through the eyes of their own animals. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah's influence extended beyond the bikers. The entire town began to embrace her presence, recognizing the value she brought to their community. Parents started bringing their children to watch her training sessions, hoping to instill a sense of responsibility and compassion in the younger generation. Local businesses offered discounts to anyone attending her workshops, and the mayor even invited her to speak at a town hall meeting about the importance of responsible pet ownership. Through it all, Sarah remained humble, always quick to credit Titan and Luna for their role in breaking down barriers. Without their unwavering loyalty and skill, none of this would have been possible. She often joked with the townsfolk that her dogs deserved medals for diplomacy, given how they had single-handedly transformed the biker gang's attitude. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within Jake himself. Once the cocky leader of the group, he now approached life with a newfound humility. He became one of Sarah's most dedicated students, frequently seeking her advice on everything from dog training to leadership skills. Over time, their relationship evolved from adversaries to allies, and eventually to friends. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned golden and red, Sarah found herself sitting around a bonfire with Jake and the rest of the bikers. The air smelled of wood smoke and roasted marshmallows, and laughter echoed through the clearing. Titan and Luna lay curled up at Sarah's feet, content and relaxed in the company of people who had once doubted them. Raising his mug of hot chocolate, Jake stood up and cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say thanks," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "To Sarah, and to Titan and Luna. You showed us what real strength looks like, not brute force, but teamwork, patience, and respect. You changed the way we think, not just about dogs, but about people too, and for that we're grateful." The other bikers cheered, raising their drinks in agreement. Sarah smiled softly, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire crackling nearby. For the first time since returning to her hometown, she felt truly accepted, not because she had proven herself, but because she had chosen to connect with others despite their differences. As the night wore on and the stars emerged overhead, Sarah reflected on how far they had all come. What had begun as a clash of egos had blossomed into something far greater, a bond forged through mutual respect and shared experiences. In a world often divided by prejudice and misunderstanding, this small victory felt monumental. And as she glanced down at Titan and Luna, their tails thumping rhythmically against the ground, she knew they had done something extraordinary, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had witnessed their journey. The transformation in the town was undeniable. What had once been a place divided by old prejudices and rigid stereotypes had become a community united by newfound respect and understanding. Sarah's presence and the incredible abilities of Titan and Luna had sparked a ripple effect that touched every corner of the small town. People who had never given much thought to dogs beyond seeing them as pets now understood the depth of the bond between humans and animals. Conversations at the local diner shifted from gossip to discussions about responsible pet ownership, while children eagerly asked their parents for books about working dogs. For Jake and his biker gang, the changes ran even deeper. They weren't just learning how to handle their own dogs, they were rethinking their roles in the community. Inspired by Sarah's dedication to her work, they began volunteering during local events, helping direct traffic or set up booths at festivals. At first, it felt strange to see bikers lending a hand instead of simply observing from the sidelines. But soon enough, their efforts became an integral part of what made these gatherings successful. Even the most skeptical townsfolk warmed up to them, realizing that beneath their tough exteriors lay good-hearted individuals willing to grow and change. Sarah noticed this shift one Saturday morning when she arrived at the weekly farmers market. The bikers were already there, organizing stalls and assisting vendors with heavy crates of produce. When she approached Jake, he grinned sheepishly. "Figured we could put our muscles to better use than revving engines," he said, shrugging. "Besides, turns out people actually smile at us when we're not being jerks." She laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. "Who would have thought?" she teased, though her tone carried warmth. It was clear that the lessons she had taught extended far beyond dog training. They had planted seeds of empathy and accountability in men who had previously relied on bravado to navigate life. As winter approached, the town prepared for its annual holiday parade. This year, however, something special was added to the lineup. A demonstration featuring Sarah, Titan, and Luna. News of their inclusion spread quickly, drawing crowds from neighboring towns eager to witness the legendary duo in action. On the EQ, day of the parade, the streets were lined with families bundled in scarves and hats, their breath visible in the chilly air. Children clutched steaming cups of cocoa, their eyes wide with anticipation. When Sarah stepped into view, leading Titan and Luna on leashes, the crowd erupted into applause. The dogs moved with practiced precision, their sleek coats gleaming under the soft glow of string lights strung above the street. Sarah guided them through a series of impressive maneuvers, tracking hidden objects, navigating obstacles, and showcasing their agility, all while maintaining perfect composure despite the cheering spectators. But the highlight came when she invited a young boy from the audience to participate in a mock search exercise. With Titan's help, the boy successfully located a stuffed toy hidden behind a stack of boxes, earning cheers and high fives from the crowd. Afterward, as Sarah stood beside her dogs catching her breath, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she saw Jake holding a steaming mug of hot chocolate. "For you," he said, handing it over. "You earned it." His expression was earnest, free of the sarcasm that had once defined their interactions. "And, thanks, again, for everything." Sarah accepted the drink with a smile. "It wasn't just me," she replied, gesturing toward Titan and Luna. "They're the real stars here." Jake nodded, crouching down to scratch Luna behind the ears. The dog wagged her tail enthusiastically, clearly enjoying the attention. "Yeah, well, you three make quite the team," he admitted. Then, after a pause, he added, "You know, I used to think strength was all about size and power, but watching you and your dogs, turns out it's about trust too. And patience. Guess I still have a lot to learn." His words stayed with Sarah long after the parade ended and the last of the decorations were packed away. As she walked home that evening, Titan and Luna trotting happily beside her, she reflected on how far they had come together, not just as a handler and her dogs, but as members of a community that had embraced them fully. The journey hadn't been easy, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, but it had also been rewarding in ways she couldn't have imagined. That night, as she sat by the fireplace with a blanket draped over her lap, Sarah watched Titan and Luna settle into their favorite spots near the hearth. Their breathing slowed, steady and rhythmic as they drifted off to sleep. Outside, snowflakes began to fall, blanketing the world in a quiet serenity. For the first time in years, Sarah felt truly at peace. She had returned to her hometown expecting resistance, perhaps even hostility, but instead she had found acceptance, and something even more precious: connection. In the weeks that followed, Sarah continued her work with the police department and the bikers, always striving to share her knowledge and passion with others. Her reputation grew beyond the borders of the small town, attracting visitors from across the region who wanted to learn from her expertise. Yet, despite her growing fame, she remained grounded, focusing on the simple joys of teaching and bonding with those around her. One evening, as she stood on a hill overlooking the town, Sarah looked out at the twinkling lights below. The bikers' motorcycles were parked neatly along Main Street, their owners mingling with shopkeepers and families. Children played in the snow, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. And nearby, Titan and Luna bounded through the drifts, their playful energy undiminished by the cold. Sarah smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had set out to prove herself, not for her own sake, but to show others what was possible when trust and teamwork came together. Along the way, she had transformed not only perceptions but lives, including her own. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she knew she wouldn't face it alone. With Titan and Luna by her side, and a community that finally understood her, she was ready for whatever came.